We will be in Indianapolis next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for the 2017 Scouting Combine live each day, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, locking in some interviews. All the coaches, all the GMs will be there. We will be too, starting next Wednesday, 6 a.m. Eastern on NBC Sports Radio and 7 a.m. on NBC-SN. There will be 10 former Alabama players at the Scouting Combine as well. Yes, 10 of them invited as Nick Saban and company continue to push high-quality talent from Tuscaloosa into the National Football League. Joining us now, a guy who knows a thing or two about Alabama football. He's been handling the play-by-play of Alabama football and men's basketball since 1988. He is the voice of the Crimson Tide, Eli Gold. Eli, welcome to the program. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me on this morning.
Well, we appreciate some of your time. We had the list of the 10 Alabama players headed to the Scouting Combine. Of the guys coming into the NFL this year, which are the ones that excite you, intrigue you the most as to what they'll do at the next level?
Well, certainly Jonathan Allen and Reuben Foster defensively are two names that immediately come to mind. And that's no disrespect to guys on the offensive side of the ball. But in my line of thinking, as it has been ever since Gene Stallings won the national title at Bama back in '92, defense wins championships. And, you know, a guy like Jonathan Allen, who was the number 2 sack man in Alabama history, behind only the great Derek Thomas. You don't win the Bednarik Award and the Nagurski and the Hendrick Award. You're not the SEC's Defensive Player of the Year by accident. And then you've got Reuben Foster, who obviously was an All-America, won the Butkus Award. And he is just – he's very instinctive. He doesn't even have to think out there, though clearly he does. But you know what I'm saying. Stuff just happens. He's a hard hitter, and he's always around the big play. So, those are a couple of names certainly on the on the defensive side of the ball that really intrigue me.
And, Eli, beyond the players, there's a coach who's heading to the NFL. He wasn't at Alabama very long. Steve Sarkisian, now the Falcons offensive coordinator. Based on your knowledge of Sarkisian, what can Falcons fans expect from him?
Well, Sark's a very good guy. He and I spent a lot of time together. As a matter of fact, we sat down in a restaurant in Atlanta prior to the game against Washington. We were waiting for our respective families to arrive, and while we were waiting, we sat down and shot the breeze extensively. He's a wonderful guy. He really, really is. And the man he's a bright mind. He does not, all of the issues he's had in the past, as we know, were off the field personal issues. He is a wonderful guy, and he knows his football, and he likes to play aggressive football. So I think the Falcons are going to have themselves. And again, regardless of all the other stuff, you don't get hired by Nick Saban just because he likes to give guys a second chance. He also has to see where this person is going to help. And the same thing with the Falcons. We all know that there's a personal relationship between he and the head coach. They go back a ways. But, friendship is one thing. You got to be able to win. And Sark was right there at the top of the list to take over, when the OC headed west. So, I don't think there's any question the guy's going to do an outstanding job. And he's just a very nice guy. I didn't know him much at all, other than by reputation, until he got to Tuscaloosa. But he really is a very, very nice guy to sit around and talk to and learn from. He's a brilliant mind.
He's voice of the Crimson Tide, Eli Gold, here on PFT Live. You mentioned Nick Saban. He's been at Alabama 10 years now. And I'm fascinated by Coach Saban. He had the 2 years at Miami. He's been highly successful at Alabama. What motivates him at this stage of his career? Because he's basically trying to climb the same mountain that he's already climbed umpteen times.
He loves what he does. He loves what he does, and this is what he is. He is a football coach. He is a teacher who is also a football coach. He teaches these young men how to be better players, how to be better people. And that was the thing he didn't like about the National Football League. Once he got the players in the NFL, they were who they were. You know, you're not going to be a coach, and I just picked this name out of the hat, so don't take anything from it. But you're not going to be a coach in the NFL and change a Flozell Adams. He is who he is. You know, Vince Wilfork, he is who he is. You're not going to come in and start changing guys. As wonderful a player as those two gentlemen are and were, but in college, you can change people. You can make them into men. You can make them into better people and get them to the level of where a Flozell Adams was in his heyday and where Vince Wilfork is. And that's what Nick Saban missed in the pros. He didn't have that molding of people element to the job. So he loves doing that. He absolutely loves recruiting. And he and I had an interesting conversation on the air on National Signing Day, of course, down in Alabama. That's almost a national holiday here. We did a big TV special, a 4-hour TV show on National Signing Day. And I said to him at one point, I said, you know, there's a difference here. I said, you recruit because you love to. Other coaches recruit because they have to. I said, is that a fair statement? And he agreed and went off and started talking about all different elements. But that's part of it, too. If you, I don't care who you are, if you enjoy getting up in the morning and go to work, you're going to do better than the guy who's going because he has to and he's just putting in his time. And Nick Saban loves recruiting, loves coaching. He thrives on this stuff. He really does.
We all have relationships in our lives, personal, professional, where it takes some time to get through that exterior shell. Nick Saban seems like a guy who has a pretty hard shell. How long did it take you to get through it?
It took a few years. It really did. That's a great comment. When he first came to Tuscaloosa, we talked when we had to, for broadcast purposes, doing interviews, etc. But, all the previous coaches with whom I worked, we'd sit around and shoot the breeze and tell stories and talk about the family and talk religion or politics or baseball or NASCAR or whatever it might have been. Nick Saban just doesn't do that. If talking to old Eli would help Alabama win football games, then I'd have giant cauliflower ears. I guarantee you that. But talking to old Eli doesn't help Alabama win football games. Now, we get along wonderfully. Understand that. The coach and I have a great relationship, and it has gotten a good bit looser over the years, but it's still not we don't sit around and shoot the breeze and tell jokes and yuck it up, whereas I did do that with other coaches in years past. So when he first came to Tuscaloosa, I actually picked up the phone a couple of months, maybe a month and a half into his tenure. I picked up the phone and I called my cohort at LSU, Jim Hawthorne, who's now retired, but Jim was the longtime voice of the LSU Tigers, worked with Nick Saban for nearly 5 years. And I said to him, Jim, I think I ticked the guy off. I said, he doesn't talk to me, like Mike Shula did, like all these other guys did who were so open and so on. And he said, Eli, I said, don't worry about it. He said, the man was here for nearly 5 years. We never had a conversation other than when you had to for on-air purposes. So it took a while. And now, of course, I've gotten him to laugh, and we chuckle a little bit. And, again, he's still not Shecky Green out there dealing with me. There's not a ton of jokes flying around, but we do get along wonderfully. I host the talk show. We get along great. But he's just not given to sitting around shooting the breeze, telling jokes, yucking it up. He's consumed by football and winning and learning another defense. It's unreal. We were in Knoxville. Just a quick aside here. We were in Knoxville. Bama's playing Tennessee, and who comes wandering in but Jerry Glanville? Now, Glanville, gave Nick Saban a job as he did to Bill Belichick years ago down with the Houston Oilers. And Glanville shows up, and he lays a bunch of blitz packages down on Nick Saban's desk, said, here, you might want to try these. And, I happened to be there, and the conversation with me stopped, and, he started talking. It's just everything he does is about improving his football knowledge, his football team, and improving the overall ability to teach these kids better football. So that's what he's concentrating on. So it took a few years for me to break through that veneer, and now we get along wonderfully. We always have. It's just we now have a little more conversation than we used to.
He's Eli Gold, Alabama Crimson Tide play-by-play voice. And Nick Saban grew up not far from where I'm sitting here in West Virginia. His father owned a gasoline station, and in a biography that came out a couple of years ago, there was talk about how his dad pushed him so hard to be a perfectionist, had to get every last speck off the hood of the car that he was washing. And I keep going back to those 2 years in the NFL with Miami. How big of a speck is that on the hood of the car that is his career, that he feels at some level compelled to try to clean that off by going back to the NFL at some point before he's done?
Well, I'll tell you that I can't speak for him, okay, and I will not presume to do so. I will tell you this, that just from, from my observations, you could knock me over with a feather if he ever went back to the National Football League. What people don't understand is that Alabama now is very much his home. Not only are he and Terry settled in Tuscaloosa, and they love the community. Terry loves it. But Coach Saban has moved his mom to Birmingham. The grandchild lives in Birmingham, with his son. Everybody's here. This is home. And I'm a big boy. I'm a few biscuits shy of 300 pounds. You could knock me over with a feather if you told me that Nick Saban would go back to the National Football League. I just cannot presume that. The man has nothing to prove to anybody. Now, does he have something to prove to himself? I don't know. He's never voiced that to me. I would never ask him. It's none of my business. But, Lordy, he has nothing to prove to anyone. So I'd be shocked if his career doesn't conclude as the coach of the Crimson Tide. He loves it, and everything's going so well. He has every resource that he needs. The facilities. The other day there were 3 top-notch NFL stars at an Alabama basketball game that I was broadcasting. And I won't mention them so as to not embarrass their NFL franchise. But these are 3 men whose names you would know and your listeners would know instantly. Okay? And I said, what in the world are you guys doing here? They said, heck, we come here to work out. Said the facilities here are so much better than the ones we've got in the National Football League. So Coach Saban is not lacking anything when he brings kids to town to try and recruit them. It is just that good of a setup, so I can't imagine he'd go anywhere. And hopefully, I praise the fact that he's satisfied with what all he's done.
Eli, very satisfied with the information today. Great talking to you. We'll talk again down the road.
All right, man. Take care.